Thank you. If I mention the film characters Bugs Bunny or Sylvester the Cat or Roadrunner, you of course know who they are, right? But they obviously are part of American folklore and certainly as familiar as Moby Dick or the Frog of Calaveras County, probably more so. But whereas you know that Moby Dick was created by Melville and the Frog by Mark Twain, you probably never thought and probably don't know who brought Bugs Bunny or the Roadrunner to life. How many can honestly say in their hearts they can answer that question? Well, now you can, because you're going to meet him here tonight. He's Chuck Jones, who is, I suppose, after Walt Disney, probably the most important cartoon animator America has produced. And in a long career in Hollywood, Mr. Jones directed and did the main drawings for some 250 short films with titles like What's Opera, Doc?, Much Ado About Nutting, Hop Along Casualty, and To Beep or Not to Beep. I must ask him about those titles, but through them, as Time magazine said, he has made moviegoers laugh as often and as well as Chaplin or Keaton. And after years as a kind of unsung hero of popular art, he's lately become more of a sung hero. And there have been film festivals about his work and magazine articles and documentaries, and now Warner Brothers is bringing out a compilation film of his work called Bugs Bunny, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. We'll be seeing samples of his work, too, a little later on in the show. But first, will you welcome, please, then, the formidable Chuck Jones. Mr. Jones, before I ask you to literally sketch anything, would you sketch in for me what sounds like a boy's dream in some ways of a childhood in Hollywood in the 20s? What you were able to see then, where you were able to hang out, and who was working in the movies?
Well, when I was about 6 years old, and during the First World War, we lived on Sunset Boulevard across from Hollywood High School. My father had an orange grove there. That showed the kind of discernment he had. You know, everybody else was beginning to understand the movies had something to do with the world, and he had oranges. And, but it was about 2 blocks from the Chaplin studio, so we had the opportunity of going down there. And one of the reasons I have a snub nose is because I spent so much time with my nose pressed against the fence. And he was a man of I learned a great deal about timing by watching Chaplin work. And I remember Father came home one day and told us that he'd watched a scene that Chaplin had done, and he did it 132 times before he had it right.
What?
For 15 seconds on the screen. So that gives you respect for timing, and I never lost that.
And most actors will admit that after the 4th take, you start to get worse, and you just can't.
Well, I think the interesting
132 takes of a set. Do you remember exactly what the piece of business was?
Yes, I do. It was. I don't have anything hooked to me, do I?
No.
I remember that when they'd run, and then they hit a corner, and they always went around like that, and then went off.
The one-legged turn?
Yeah, the one-legged turn. It was used by the Keystone Cops by Chaplin and others, but and we of course stole it. It's surprising how much stuff they stole from us 20 years before we did it. I call it retroactive plagiarism.
Yeah.
But the difference here was that it was apparently he wanted to look like an icy piece of pavement. So not having any ice, he greased that thing, and so he'd have to hit and slip around. But the interesting thing about it, he was a very compassionate person, Chaplin, and though he put himself through that kind of punishment, he would never put one of his actors through it. And you find that there is a point of fatigue beyond, as you know yourself, that after maybe 4 takes, they lose the spontaneity, and the next take is going to be murders, even if you get the first one right.
Well, I'm sure that if you heard Chaplin talk about comedy and a man who does animation talk about the same thing, they'd use much of the same vocabulary. Well, at least they talk about the same thing. I remember Chaplin, supposedly directing Sophia Loren once, said that the reason this isn't funny is that the skirt is not falling at the right speed. And they put nuts and bolts in it so that it would fall fast.
Precisely.
There are funny speeds for things to fall and unfunny speeds.
Yeah, there are funny attitudes. Jack Benny said that 3 fingers are funny, but 4 fingers aren't.
Yeah, so whenever he said something else, it isn't quite the same.
Whenever he put his hand up, it was like this, you know, he'd talk. Well, it's a very difficult thing to write that kind of material.
Yeah, but everything in animation is timing. You could almost say, couldn't you?
Except that
the lessons in comic timing to watch the great cartoons. Does the word cartoon offend you at all?
Not a bit. Yeah. Of course, Raphael used cartoons. Leonardo da Vinci used cartoons. You know, there's no point in not associating with the greatest.
Yeah, of course not. You never know when you learn something.
Well, the early drawings, of course, that was the original use of the term, was the drawing itself. The pre-drawing was called a cartoon. And cartography comes on the same basis. I told you I'd slop a little culture in there.
I'm glad you did. Did you watch Laurel and Hardy shoot?
Oh, yes. One of the nice things that we learned a lot about those people because Laurel and Hardy were a perfect example of the contrast between a slender comedian and a fat one. But all fat comedians work in very closely as though they were surrounded by a cylinder that they couldn't get outside of. It was as though something was protecting them out there, you know? Like W.C. Fields, when he made a take, was always inside like this, or Hardy was always in here.
Small and close and delicate.
Like he had a blast cylinder on him. He couldn't get outside of it. But Laurel, on the other hand, would come along like this, you know, and, pardon me, makeup. But he'd come like this, or Danny Kaye, or any of these people, their arms are all over the place. But the heavy ones...
Thinner comic takes up space.
Zero Mostel is a marvelous example of this. He implied great grace by not actually providing it. He'd come forward like this, bring one arm up, and then look back at his toe, and then point with his toe. He's too big.
And it reads graceful.
Danny Kaye would go like this, but he would go...
The size
accomplish the same thing.
It's a fascinating point. Now, how does that particular point apply, say, to animation? If you do... is that also true in animated characters? Does a hippopotamus have correspondingly small gestures?
I didn't have too much to do with hippopotamuses, but if I did, yes. The fat characters usually move with much more moderation, much more economy than the thinner ones. And, of course, Daffy Duck is a pretty good example of a character that moved pretty rapidly, and he was always in a position to do so. Again,
stand up.
Sure, okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay? All right, stand up?
Yeah,
okay.
quite.
Even if I don't have a reason?
Yes.
But like Bugs Bunny stands like this, you see, which is holding, this is a black carrot. But he stands with all his weight on one leg, and the other leg is free. This is
I
not
didn't realize that. Bugs Bunny always stands with one leg out.
Yeah, and then he holds the carrot up like this, and usually his hand's on his hip. And he takes the bite, and then he looks over like this and says, "What's up, Doc?" over Elmer's shoulder. See, if you want to be Elmer, but you're not really built for it.
Well,
but Daffy, you see, who's afraid of moving, I mean, he's afraid somebody's going to come up behind him, is always moving around, and he keeps his legs bent because he's never sure when he's going to have to leave. You know, he's overcome by cowardice, you might say.
Say, would you give us a roll call of your characters, the ones that are and are not yours?
Well,
you're not Tom and Jerry.
I did. I directed some Tom and Jerry's, but it was not my character, and I didn't really understand them as well as I did, say, the Roadrunner and Coyote. So when I did Tom and Jerry's, they looked like Roadrunner and Coyote and cat and mouse drag. But, no,
sorry to hear that.
The way it worked at Warner Brothers, there were 3 different units, and our unit all the units did some Bugs Bunny, some Daffy Duck, some Porky Pigs, and so on. But there was my unit did all of the Roadrunner and Coyotes, and all of the Pepé Le Pew, the little French skunk, you know, that was absolutely certain of himself, you know.
He's yours. Without you, we would not have had Pepé.
Do not come with me to the Casbah.
That's
now,
right.
he wouldn't say it to you, but I mean, he would say it to his girl.
No, but
you're the only one handy.
We can take one of these later. He is, in
I have
fact,
a volunteer from the audience.
You're animated yourself, aren't you? Of course. After all,
I think, but
the man who creates a skunk who's a sex symbol to ladies across the country.
I think you're supposed to ask me to make a drawing now. I'm not used to drawing on gray paper, you understand.
You have nothing traced on there or anything.
No, you can't do that.
Gee, we're actually going to see Roadrunner come to life and.
See, I was supposed to rest my foot here on my crease of my trousers and lay this thing here. It's impossible. I can't do it.
Oh, please. Okay. Have you ever illustrated your own trousers? Oh, never mind.
Illustrated my own trousers.
Well, it's like a slip of the pen. Here he comes.
You always put the beep on first, just to be sure. That's a Roadrunner head going very fast.
Do you always begin with the head? How dumb a question is that?
Oh, not at all. It's just a logical place to begin, because you put a tail up there, nobody quite knows what it is, you know. You have to be fast. You don't have to be good, but you have to be fast.
Well, are you serious about you don't have to be good? Because if the picture flashes by that fast, nobody gets time to judge any individual drawing.
Well, you know, they shouldn't, of course. Would you call me Chuck so I can call you Dick?
Sure.
Okay. Because
Mr. Dick
that's the way they do. Mr. Dick, I thought those were a brand of shorts. Well, I didn't mean that.
Isn't something missing from his anatomy here?
He's a kind of a small ostrich, a small, very fast ostrich. Actually, he's a member of the cuckoo family.
Did you ever have any doubts whether it would be a roadrunner or any other fowl?
Well, we thought one time, we were just, Mike and I thought we were going to, Mike Maltese, was the writer who worked with me, and he pretty much had the idea for this. But we were talking about crazy chases, like aardvarks chasing wildebeests or stuff like that. Actually, we were trying to do a takeoff on chases, because everybody was chasing everybody, including all our stuff, Bugs are being chased by Elmer and so on. And I remember this guy who really exists. And I finally met a lady last week who is the world's leading authority on the real roadrunner. And she spent hours and hours of studying in the southwestern American desert. And it's the name of it is Geococcus californicus is the real name of it. I mean, we call it hard Oedipus and stuff like that, but that was what she called. And curiously enough, she says that the actual roadrunner really does stick to the roads, because there's no interference, you see, when they go along. So that, and also people throw garbage and stuff out, and that attracts flies, and these guys live on flies, and insects.
What did they do before they were
you see, I invented the roadrunner in a true image.
You really did?
God and I got together, and I came up with this. But the mother of the roadrunner.
You always give credit to your collaborators.
Yes. Okay.
Well, there he is. The roadrunner is male, of course.
Well, he is every place but in France, and they call him Mimi over there, M-I-M-I, because the sound is really about mimi, like that.
Mimi.
Mimi, and you can read it as, I write it as beep beep, but in France they actually call the character M-I-M-I, and I suppose it's because the French can't understand anybody, can't picture anybody chasing anybody for any reason but love. Over here we think of food, and it shows the difference between Americans and French.
It's very revealing. What we're equipped to do now is to segue almost immediately into some excerpts of some of Roadrunner and Coyotes. What are you writing there?
Just addressing it to you.
Oh, that's very nice.
And you can tear that part off.
Say, that reminds me, before we go into the tape...
That's what it looks like anyway. Just wanted to say...
How about that? It's great to see him come to life, right?
It shows better on the screen than it does here. I've never drawn on gray paper before.
Let's take a look at this sample of your work, and then we can talk some more about it. Roll that, if you will, and we'll see our old friend animated and lively as ever. Here he comes. There's a lot of difference between a first-rate animation and just one that's been tossed off, you can tell. While we were watching that, you were whispering to me of certain things to look for, like that when he's balanced on his head there, when he's completely trying the craziest possible stunt. But that moment of overbalance and little details like that, which you could have gotten away without putting in, nobody would have noticed they were missing.
Well, I don't think the gag would really work unless you did that, because he's putting so much effort into maintaining, getting his balance, that I don't think, even though you've seen a lot of cartoons, you don't really think that can happen, that particular thing can happen. Not when he's gone to that much work. You know, if he went up there and balanced and immediately fell, you'd expect it.
That's right.
But after all, he's working his tail off getting into proper balance. God knows what he intended to accomplish by sliding down that wire.
Yes.
I haven't ever noticed it.
But we forget that.
He simply lost whatever reasons he had for doing it.
Remember, what else you pointed out while that was on? There was some small detail that you pointed to of something something someone was wearing, or no? Well,
it was the
it was the little things that happen at the end after the boulders have come down on him. Then there's a little plinking pebble.
Well, you probably all noticed that when something disastrous happens, there's an after noise of some kind, you know. You may have noticed when the first time you're learning how to skate, on the old-fashioned skates, you take a header, and as you're lying on the sidewalk, you hear the skates going around, right? It's infuriating to hear that, because after all, everybody ought to be quiet. It's, you know, somebody said an adventure is a mistake rightly considered. And but when you fall down, damn it, people should hold off and say, hey, wait a minute now, this guy's, you know, this is the fact they're sitting around laughing at you, but the skate has no right to contribute to the laughter. And at the last, when those rocks come down, you see the great mass, it'd be so simple to get away from it, but then the others come down, it's like the skate going around.
By the way, do animators ever put in any little touches like that they know no one but maybe friends or other animators will notice? Someone took me to a cartoon once in which a fish bowl with fish was broken, and then there was a rather violent scene following it with a cat. But if you watched the right corner of the screen and you had to be told to watch it, you could see a very indignant fish walking off furious. Little small goldfish. And
well, that's what
people
I'd call
would take their friends to that and say, now watch the bottom. See, there he goes.
Yeah, that's an indulgence.
That's inside.
I mean, that's just something that the animator puts in for his own good, like we did with the Acme Corporation. For years, nobody knew anything about why the Acme Corporation was there, and I didn't for sure. But anytime we had a store or a factory or anything like that, or a dancing academy, it was always the Acme Dancing Academy, or the Acme. Also, we got to thinking about Acme cleaners and dyers, you know, and that led to an idea that I pass this on to you for what it's worth, but it'll probably drive you crazy, and that is, whenever you see a cleaner and dyer driving by, if it says, say, Blue Goose Cleaners and Dyers, which it could be, well, you think that the only thing they clean and dye are blue geese.
Yes, like the Eagle laundry.
The Eagle hand laundry. You know, does your eagle have dirty hands?
You ever try to wash
you bring him here and get his. Nobody wants to have an eagle with dirty hands.
Certainly I do.
Well, it'd drive you crazy. I mean,
say, who's the idiot at Warner Brothers who destroyed about 4 million drawings, and why? It's a horrible thing. It's not.
Yeah.
I suppose not the same as the burning of the library at Alexandria, but...
Oh, yes. No, it was worse than that.
It was?
Yeah, well, far worse.
Well, I wasn't there, and I really didn't realize the dimension.
Well, I was at both events, so I know.
Tell what actually happened. It's terrible.
It was quite a bit after we left, and it wasn't the Warner Brothers. They probably would have done it if they thought about it. But somebody once said about described Jack Warner, they said an empty taxi cab drove up in front of the Biltmore Hotel and Jack Warner got out.
But leaving that aside...
No, this is Warner Brothers has changed hands several times, so this is like Warner cousins now, or second cousins. The present management Warner is very siblings. Good. We have some people there who really like cartoons for a change. Yeah. But they sold it to somebody and then somebody else. I think the second somebody else one time looked at this room, this building, that where all these drawings and celluloids representing, well, you can say 30 cartoons a year of 5,000 drawings each, times 30 years, 30 cartoons a year. I don't even, it's well over 1 million, maybe 5 million drawings and celluloids and stuff like that. And they thought, but they needed some place to store the records for the publicity department, so they took this stuff out in bulldozers and dumped it in the incinerator and burned them all up. Oh. And it's far too big a crime to I can't even think about it, because I think of all those drawings and how much pleasure it would have been for people to have them. Anybody, just pass them out on the street corner. Yeah. Because the people, I mean, it's terribly endearing to somebody that's been in animation for all these years, and see how much a drawing means to them.
To have
you know?
the Roadrunner on
to
your
make
wall,
a
or Bugs
drawing
Bunny
and
or
have
whatever.
somebody, God, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been so lucky to spend all my life doing things that I've enjoyed doing.
Sent them to hospitals.
And how lucky can you get?
They were also, if you could put a monetary value on them, and there were millions of them.
Yeah.
So maybe that
Well,
would make
you know,
the hard
it's-
heart bleed of the person who did it.
Yeah.
Do we know who that was, so we can keep from
No,
striking again?
but I tell you who does know though, and that is the Greeks had three ladies named the Furies.
Yeah.
And they were real neat, you know. They had all kinds of things and fingernails, you know, and pointy teeth and everything like that. And they took care of crimes unpunishable on Earth. You may remember them. So you could get away with anything on Earth. The more you got away with, the more those ladies were going to be there to meet you when you left. You know, open the portal and you walk out, and here they are, you know. They're 19 feet tall, stark naked, and covered with razor blades. Yes.
19 feet
And
tall
they
was
take,
enough.
and it doesn't stop, you see. It goes on forever.
So this man is going to fall in the hands of one or more of the Furies.
Let's say it's a person. I have a feeling it was a lady.
A woman did that?
Well, on second thought. A person did that.
Well, it is a sad thing to know.
At any rate, it was unfortunate, to say the least. And I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm sorry to say we're out of time. There may be just time for you to say why it is that animators can't draw fleas.
Who said they couldn't?
I heard somebody said that the fleas are the hardest thing to draw because of the way
no. I made a perfect cricket, and I made a film once about the strongest flea in the world called the Mighty Angelo. And he went away to spend his vacation on a nice, quiet dog in the country. And his adventures on that, but he was a marvelous flea.
Yeah. Maybe it's that they can't draw flies. I have.
There you are. I knew we'd end on that kind of a note.
Chuck, thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure, Chuck Jones.
It's a great honor
to be here. I'm glad that your fine contribution is being recognized even more as time passes.
Well, there are a lot of people that I found that the best substitute for talent is to surround yourself with talent, and I've always done that. And I'm glad to have accomplished it again today.
Very nicely said. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow night.